You can't tell me that these guys cannot hit air units. I don't buy it. Oh, but they're lasers. They can't aim them upwards, you say. Stop. Look at him. Look at that guy. There is no way that thing cannot headbutt an air unit. The Colossus is a heavy support strider and one of the Protoss' primary splash damage options. They can be built from the robotics facility so long as a robotics bay is also present on the map. Their basic stats: production cost of 300-200, 54-second build time, 6 supply, 200 life, 150 shields, and 1 base armor. Additionally, they are classified as armored, massive, and mechanical. And if you're not sure why mechanical is a tag, might I remind you of the Terran Raven's interference matrix. Their attack is comprised of 2 thermal lances, each hitting enemy ground units for 10 damage, or 15 versus light, in a linear area. Although the graphic makes it feel like units should only take damage when the beams make contact, I'm not entirely sure that's the case. From the time of firing, the damage is done so quickly that I don't think you can avoid it with movement. Before I talk about usage, there's 2 things I'd like to bring up. First, Colossi have a passive ability called cliff walking, which allows them to traverse up and down ledges in terrain as well as over other units. They cannot walk over buildings, but that does sound kind of neat now that I bring it up. The second point is that there is an awesome research available at the Robotics Bay, Extended Thermal Lance. Given that the Colossi's attack is called Thermal Lance, would you like to take a guess at what this research does? I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and say, good job. It does increase the range of their attack. With the research completed, their attack range goes from 7 to 9. It also changes the color of the beams to a more red tone, but that's more to let your opponent know about the research. Now to talk about using these overgrown laser giraffes. They're obviously quite valuable and expensive, so you will want to keep them safely behind other units, ideally. With a slow movement speed, they lend themselves towards slower death ball style compositions that include units like Immortals, Archons, Carriers, etc. One major vulnerability to be aware of that I will discuss further in the counters section is that the Colossus can be targeted by anti-air attacks. Since the Colossus cannot fight back against air units, this means that air-to-air attacks can nullify your precious robo-related plans, so be careful with them. Although it is recommended to keep specialist units on a separate control group from your main army for the most part, I don't think that's really necessary with Colossi. Their incredible range can somewhat keep them safe when you smash that all-army hotkey. One final note on usage, banking off of that same point, their incredible range also makes them get distracted easily. Many times have I found one trying to refurbish the side of a supply depot while the rest of my army dies to Terran bio. Maybe, just keep an eye on them. Give them a nudge or a kick towards the priority targets like Marines, Zealots, Zerglings, or Hydralisks. Colossi are a fun, fantastic option for dealing with light ground enemies. or at least making your army look like it could be box art. One bit of good news on the counter side is that they are not as good as they used to be, since they're much more specialized versus light units now. Other weaknesses to be aware of? Well, the glaringly obvious one is the air attack vulnerability. Other than that, they're slow moving, they can't really hit that many units at a time, and are a rather expensive tech choice. You can try to surround them, isolate them via hitting multiple places at once, forcing movement or rotation of the army, or try to pick them off with armored units. Terran players, here's the core list: Marauders, Siege Tanks, Vikings, Liberators. Marauders, being an armored, anti-armor choice, work well against a lot of what Protoss has anyways. Concussive shells may not do you any good versus the Colossi, but Stim will at least ensure that they don't get away from you. The claim to fame of the Siege Tank is going to be their range. If you can get your tanks entrenched and set up, the Colossi just have a hard time engaging. Should a fight happen, you can have your tanks focus fire individual Colossi down, while trying to be a bit careful with your Marines. Vikings are the most obvious counter that most people will go for upon seeing Colossi. Their long-range air attack allows them to target fire the Colossi with no direct recompense. My only caution for you is to be aware of Storm. Storms have killed many a Viking back in the days of longboats and raiding, and they are just as deadly to us now. Liberators are what I would consider to be the late game option, and may take some getting used to. You'll want to set these airborne siege tanks up in ways to either protect your core army or encourage the Protoss to give up a position. Either way, the Colossi have no chance.
Standing by.
An honorable mention has to go out to the Thor as well. They may not be a common pick versus Protoss, but the fact that they can hit the Colossi with their anti-air attack is awesome. Switch them into the high-impact cannons mode and go wild. Protoss, it feels a bit rare to see Colossi in the current PvP meta. A lot of PvP seems to fall into two categories: Charge Lot Immortal Archon or Stalker Disruptor. Nonetheless, the Colossi can be a good answer versus gateway heavy armies that include a lot of Zealots or Charge Lots, so let's talk about some counterplay. Blink Stalkers can do reasonably well depending on what else is in play. Use your Blink ability to spread out or try to avoid some of the laser attacks, and enjoy having an armored anti-armor unit.
I am the voice of the eclipse.
From the robotics tech path, you'll want to look at Immortals and Disruptors. Both are solid options, but beware the control that is needed for the Disruptors. Their friendly fire is the stuff of legends and highlight videos. As a final note, any Stargate unit will do wonderfully, since the Colossi cannot hit air units. Void Rays and Carriers are likely to be the easiest to use, but the Tempest will likely perform the best, given their long range and bonus damage versus massive targets. Zerg brood leaders. We all know how standard it is to build roaches versus Protoss. The roaches will perform similarly to the marauders. They're great at overwhelming and not taking the bonus damage, but they may suffer versus the rest of the Protoss army. As you work your way into the mid-game, you can choose between trying to brute force your way with roaches or moving up the tech tree. A Spire is a great option against Protoss in general, but especially versus Colossi. Corruptors are the more direct counter, but the Mutas will be a bit more versatile, so the choice is somewhat up to you. As the game progresses, Hive Tech has some amazing options. I have to recommend Vipers the most because they're just so darn useful. Use Abduct to isolate Colossi from the Protoss pack, or Blinding Cloud to confuse them in a fight. If you're looking for a more direct option, though, you can take your pick. Ultralisks, Seismic Spine, upgraded lurkers, or Broodlords are all going to be good enough. The bigger concern usually is what else does the Protoss have in addition to the Colossi. Whether it's to fight Zerglings, wage a war of the worlds, or just make a sweet box art style army, the Colossus is one of the most iconic SC2 Protoss units. I hope this guide was helpful, or at least entertaining. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great day.